Namaskar. In this segment, we will do Purva Paksha of various Mahabharata researchers in the context of astronomy observations of Mars from the Mahabharata text. We will try to analyze along the lines such as these. Did these Mahabharata researchers showed awareness for all of these Mars observations? Or did these Mahabharata researchers employ the astronomy evidence of Mars in arriving at their proposed timeline for the Mahabharata war? And finally, irrespective of the first two, can we look at these Mahabharata observations and test them for the proposed timeline of these researchers and arrive at a conclusion whether these can be or cannot be corroborated for their timeline? Let's begin with specific Mars observations of Mahabharata text. Let us begin with the first two references of Mars. They appear in Udyog Parva. The first reference, Krutva Changarako Vakram Jesthayam Madhusudana Anuradha Prarthayate Maitram Sanshamayaniva. The second reference, Nunam Mahadbhyam Krishna Kurunam Samupastitam Visheshenahi Varshneya Chitram Pidayate Graha. The translation of first reference is something like this. Angarak planet Mars was seen going Vakri near Nakshatra Jeshtha and Nakshatra Anuradha. The translation of second reference goes something like this. This planet, and by this planet referring to planet Mars, was seen afflicting Nakshatra Chitra. Let's go to the third reference. It appears in Bhishma Parva, and we have seen this reference before. Senayor Shivam Goram Karishyati Mahagraha Agaswangarako Vakra Shravane Brahaspati. This is our reference number 3. There are two astronomy observations here, one related to Jupiter and the second related to Mars, which is Magaswangarako Vakra. Means planet Mars was also going Vakra or has gone Vakra near Nakshatra Magha. Let's get to the next observation. Again, it appears in Bhishma Parva. We will see two observations here. First observation, Dhruva Prajvalito Ghoram Apasavya Pravartate Chitra Swatantre Cheva Dishtita Parusho Graha. And the second observation, Vakran Vakram Krutvam Shravane Pavaka Prava Brahma Rashim Samavrutya Lohitango Vyavastita. So that's observation number 5. Translation of observation number 4 goes something like this. By becoming steady between Nakshatra Chitra and Nakshatra Swati, while shining brightly and having a fearsome appearance, this planet Mars, started moving in an apasavya direction, that is a non-normal, abnormal direction. Translation of reference 5 will go something like this. Vakranu Vakram Krutvam Cha Shravane Pavaka Prava. After going through these Vakra, Anuvakra directions, and we already saw it going through Vakri motion twice, and now this Apasavya motion once. So possibly referring to all these motions, Vakranu Vakram Krutvam Cha. After going through all these Vakra and Anuvakra motions, finally this Lohitango, this planet Mars, arrived in the region of Nakshatra Shravan and then settled right along Nakshatra Brahma Rashi, which refers to Nakshatra Abhijit or Vega. Let's look at the last reference of Mars. It appears in Shalya Parva. Bhrugu Sunu Dharaputro Shashi Jaina Samanvito Charamam Panduputranam Purastat Sarvabhubhujam. That is number 6. Translation of this reference goes something like this. Planet Mars, planet Venus, and planet Mercury were seen together in front of Yudhishthir in the war. Now this description is specifically of the 18th and the last day of the war, and sometime around morning or definitely before noon. Alright, so these are the 6 specific astronomy observations of Mars. Let's note down some of the commonalities that we can notice. For example, in the first reference, we have reference to Mars going Vakra. We also have reference of Mars going Vakra in reference number 3. And we also have third reference to these Vakranu-Vakra motions. So let's connect these 3 instances of Mars motion. Then we also notice that Nakshatra Chitra is mentioned twice. In one case, Mars is described as afflicting Chitra, Pidayate, and in second case, Mars is described as settled near Chitra while shining brightly and moving in a apasavya, non-normal, abnormal motion. Quickly note down the words different nomenclature that is used for planet Mars. For example, Dharaputro, that is Mars, also Angarak, that is Mars, again Angarak, and also we have Lohitanga, all of these referring to planet Mars. Finally, I want to leave you with a word that we have seen multiple times when we looked at observations of Saturn and Jupiter, and that is Pidayate. We will not discuss the significance of this Pidayate in analyzing observations of Mars. However, at some point down the line, I do want to discuss a possible significance of this Pidayate or Pidayate in the context of all astronomy observations of planet from the Mahabharata text. There are 2 specific points I would like to mention in the context of astronomy observations of Mars from the Mahabharata text. Majority, if not all, Mahabharata researchers of the present and the past have missed both of these points. The first point is the connection of these astronomy references. For example, reference number 1 and reference number 2 are next to each other, but that's not the only reason to assume that they belong to the same planetary description. Majority of Mahabharata researchers have ignored a reference to, or they have interpreted reference to as referring to some different planet and not planet Mars. Same thing has occurred with reference number 4 and 5 together. While many Mahabharata researchers have recognized that reference number 5 has something to do with planet Mars, well, they had no choice because of the word Lohitango. Many of them, I would say almost all of them, have failed to make a connection between reference 4 and 5. The connection is essentially all these descriptions of reference 4 and 5 are referring to planet Mars. So that is point number 1. The second point is descriptions of Vakri motions of Mars. We have description of Mars going Vakri near Nakshatra Jeshta and Anuradha. And then we also have description of Mars going Vakri near Nakshatra Magha. Then there is additional reference, not with respect to a specific nakshatra, but these different motions of Mars, Vakra Anuvakra, Vakra and Anuvakra. And this possibly would include Mars moving in the opposite direction, non-normal, abnormal direction, that is described in reference number 4. We know two facts. One is, if we look at all these 6 references, we know that the descriptions of Mars in the Mahabharata text appear to begin with its position near Nakshatra Magha and ends with position of the Mars near Nakshatra Brahma Rashi or Nakshatra Abhijit. If we take the journey of Mars beginning with Magha, then it would have traveled through Purva Falguni, Uttara Falguni, Hasta, Chitra, Swati, Vishakha, Anuradha, Jeshta, Mula, Purvashada, Uttarashada, Shravan, and somewhere there Nakshatra Abhijit. This constitutes approximately half of the total orbit. We know the orbital period of Mars is about 2 years, just shy of 2 years. To be precise, 1.88 years. So at a minimum, Mahabharata text is describing journey of Mars over a period of at least 1 year. Now the reason I said at least 1 year is because now that takes us into our second point, which is assuming planet Mars had not traveled retrograde during this time. If it did, then actually the total period over which these Mahabharata observations were made would amount to about 18 months or longer. Now, why is this important? This is important because if you look at the positions of Mars described as Vakri, first near Nakshatra Magha in that sequence, and then near Nakshatra Jeshta and Anuradha, if we take the meaning of Vakri as we understand in our times, that is, it's referring to the retrograde motion of a planet, then these two references simply cannot be explained. If you take a distance between Nakshatra Magha and Nakshatra Jeshta Anuradha, and by distance I mean of course the astronomical distance in the sky, but also nakshatra space distance, then we know that if we interpret Vakri as retrograde, this is simply not possible. Now why is that? Because Mars only goes retrograde once in 2 years. And we have this journey of Mars described over a period of about 1 year or a maximum of 16 months. Or sorry, 18 months. So in this period, Mars can go retrograde. Now remember, I did not say Vakri. It will go retrograde only once. So if we have to accept the descriptions of Mars going Vakri as given in Mahabharata text, we have to look for some alternate meaning of Vakri that might have been current at the time of the Mahabharata war. Now we come to the discussion of works of other Mahabharata researchers in the context of observations of Mars. The ultimate outcome for their research in the context of these 6 specific observations of Mars is rather straightforward, as you can see it on the screen. They all are screaming as no. What does that mean is each of these researchers and their proposed timeline, and we are sticking to this same set of researchers as we analyze planetary observations of Mahabharata text. When it comes to Mars, none of these researchers, and what I mean is their proposed timeline, can corroborate any of the 6 observations of Mars. Now, let me repeat. Again, these are randomly selected group of Mahabharata researchers. Now, it's not completely random. In fact, my criteria was that the researcher must have proposed a specific first day of the Mahabharata war. So that was the criteria. But I'm sure there are many other researchers who have also proposed the first day of Mahabharata war. I did include some popular names because they are doing rounds on internet and they are taken as experts in this field. All of them, all of their proposed timeline failed to corroborate any of these 6 specific observations of Mars. Now, notice in some cases I have single star or double star next to that no, and even I have one yes in row number 4 or 5, but basically Mars referring to Mars going Vakri near Magha, and in the column for the proposal of Professor Iyengar. If I have to take time, it will take a long time to go through the specific nuances of why I have described them with a single star or double star, but I will describe few to give you a flavor. For example, proposal of Shri Hole, it's pretty clear in the sense that none of the 6 descriptions of Mars can be corroborated for the year 3143 BCE. When it comes to proposal of Professor Raghavan, originally proposed 1969, recently, by recent I mean about 15 years ago, around 2001, claimed to have tested by Professor Achar. Professor Achar does refer to one reference of Mars, and that is from the Udyog Parva, that Mars going Vakri near Jyeshtha and Anuradha. And the second reference just next to it, Mars afflicting Chitra, Visheshanai Varshneya Chitra Pidayate Graha. He simply interprets it to mean as referring to some other planet. Okay, so that's why I have the 2 stars there. He just missed it. In any case, let's come back to the first reference that he assertively claims to be true to corroborate his timeline of 3067 BCE. The reality is far from his claim. Mars did go Vakri in the region of Nakshatra Vishakha and Nakshatra Swati. Now they are close to Jyeshta and Anuradha, but they are not Jyeshta or Anuradha. So the claim that Mars went Vakri near Jyeshta Anuradha, assuming Vakri to mean retrograde, then it's not correct and thus it's not corroborated. But then what is interesting is, if he claimed Vakri as retrograde, then what is his explanation when Mars is also described going Vakri near Nakshatra Magha? Well, recall our theory proposed by Professor Achar, but also by Professor Mohan Gupta, that number of these descriptions of specific planets, Brahaspati, Angarak, Lohitango, Shaneshchar, Buddha, Shukra, are not really planets, but they are comets. All right, well, we would have hoped that maybe there was a comet going retrograde near Nakshatra Magha during the year 3067 BCE, or for that matter 1952 BCE, a proposal of Professor Gupta. We don't see any of this. The last reference, and you will see a lot of double stars there. In fact, I ran out of different simple methods to distinguish. Majority of Mahabharata researchers, and in this case, all the names that you are seeing, with possible exception of Sri Ketkar, because I have not seen his original work, all the Mahabharata researchers that you see here have simply not shown any awareness of this sixth reference, where Mars, Venus, and Mercury are described as seen together in the eastern sky on the morning of the 18th day of the war. By mistake, I have typed there as 17th day. It should be 18th day of the war. They are not even aware of it. All of these researchers have also not shown awareness when it comes to the position of Mars aligning along Nakshatra Brahmarashi. Some of them have recognized position of Mars near Nakshatra Shravan based on Vakranu Vakram Krutvam Cha Shravana Pavaka Prabha, the two bright Shravan. But all of them have not recognized the significance of Brahmarashi. Again, all of these researchers have also missed the reference of Mars becoming steady and moving in the apasavya motion while shining brightly near Nakshatra Chitra and Swati. So in short, that is our Purva Paksha of various Mahabharata researchers. That includes the list that I have shown here, but also many other research attempts that I have analyzed for the astronomy observations of Mars from the Mahabharata text.